San Diego coastkeeper put the federal government on notice in late December. The environmental advocacy group filed an intent to sue the International Boundary and Water Commission for violating the sewage discharge permit at the federal government's South Bay sewage plant.
We have tried, along with many other groups and elected officials, to take a softer route to find funding, to encourage IBWC to work more quickly, but none of that thus far has worked.
The sewage infrastructure south of the border is broken, allowing billions of gallons of sewage-tainted water to flow into the United States. Those contaminated flows have overwhelmed the sewage capture and treatment facilities on this side of the border. That's a violation of the IBWC's discharge permit, which requires the plant to meet Clean Water Act standards.
Fecal coliform or enterococcus, kind of sewage bacteria indicators, have to be at a low enough level so that they don't threaten public health or degrade the environment. And the same with a whole range of things. In this case, the South Bay treatment plant has limits on a number of chemicals that are, because it treats sewage from Tijuana, that sewage also has toxic chemicals and hazardous substances in it.
The problem is not new, and the region's pollution regulators, the San Diego Water Quality Control Board, are working with the IBWC instead of punishing the federal agency.
The board is aware of the violations. The board has authority to take strong enforcement action, and to date, they have not done that. And so we are stepping in as citizens, as a clean water advocacy group, to take action to hold IBWC accountable.
Regional board officials have issued citations, but they have not fined the federal agency for violating terms of its discharge permit. The board's David Gibson says a Supreme Court decision in the early 1990s linked to Clean Water Act violations in Ohio rules that out.
In that, the Supreme Court ruled that unless Congress has specifically waived sovereign immunity applies under the Clean Water Act and other federal statutes. Federal immunity has not been waived for the International Boundary and Water Commission.
Regulators have given the federal agency until August to make much-needed repairs to the aging sewage treatment plant, but the $18 million due to be spent falls well short of the $300 million needed to rehabilitate the plant.
So while we cannot issue punitive fines, we can work with them and ensure that they understand the expectations under the Clean Water Act. We can turn to U.S. EPA for support, federal agency to federal agency, to make sure that the right things happen in the right order to bring the plant back into compliance.
For the last 10 years, we've had underinvestment in this plant. There hasn't been appropriate maintenance. There hasn't been appropriate operations, which is why we're in the debacle we are in right now.
Paloma Aguirre is at the end of her rope. Her town's beaches have been off limits to swimmers and surfers for well over 2 years. And that's brutal for a community that celebrates its connection to the ocean.
We're in the worst situation we've ever been. So we need to use every single tool available to us to make sure that the agencies that are in charge of protecting public health, that the agencies that are in charge of wastewater treatment, that the agencies that are in charge of protection of our environment, that they're all held accountable and responsible. Because right now we have a crisis that is the biggest public health and environmental crisis of our region, if not the nation.
Imperial Beach led the effort to sue the federal government 6 years ago after federal officials promised to do more to stop the polluted flows. But the flows have gotten worse. Aguirre is taking a hard look at canceling the settlement. Coastkeepers Philip Musigas says he won't settle because he wants to see
court-ordered federal court legal agreement that will hold IBWC accountable if they don't meet these deadlines.
The lawsuit could be filed in March. IBWC officials referred KPBS to the Department of Justice for comment. The DOJ declined. Erik Anderson, KPBS News.